Running through the central heart of the Scottish Highlands lies a 200-year-old canal. Designed to provide a shortcut for sailing ships of old from Scotland's west coast to the North Sea, avoiding the treacherous Pentland, Firth and Cape Wrath, 22 miles of canal and 29 lochs were dug to link 3 natural lochs, creating a 60-mile waterway across the country.
We're on a voyage through its charms and scenery, keeping an eye out for the famous Loch Ness Monster and sailing past Britain's tallest mountain as we take our 37-foot sailboat Florence to 32 metres above sea level and travel 60 miles through the centre of Scotland on the Caledonian Canal.
They say in Scotland in these lochs the wind is either going one way or the other, never across. Well, the forecast was for it to come across, but they're right, it's not coming from there, it's coming from dead on the nose. So we're motoring up the beautiful Loch Linnhe towards the Corran Narrows, and beyond that we have the Caledonian Canal, which is going to give us a shortcut through the Highlands of Scotland and out to the North Sea on the other side, when we can get up to Shetland and set off for the Arctic and Norway.
So we're through the Corran Narrows and we've been able to set a sail. The wind is pretty gusty up here because it's blowing down from the mountains. We passed the Glencoe mountain range, which is really beautiful. And then behind me at the moment, you might be able to see some snow on top of the mountain. And that is Ben Nevis. So not just the biggest mountain in Scotland, but also the tallest of the whole United Kingdom. So yeah, really beautiful, clear day today. It's quite unusual for there to be no cloud up there. I think, unfortunately, for the next few days, it's going to be a bit more cloudy. But if we're lucky, we might get a chance to get a bit closer to Ben Nevis. So now the wind is actually blowing across the loch. I think it's just funneling down the mountains. We've just got a little bit further to go up past Fort William to a marina where we're going to stop the night before starting the Caledonian Canal tomorrow morning. So this is it. We are outside the first sea lock and ready and waiting to start the transit of the Caledonian Canal. We've got a fairly big morning this morning. We aren't travelling very far. We could probably walk the distance in about an hour at the very most, but it's going to take us most of the morning.
The reason that it will take so long for such a short distance is that we are not just moving Florence horizontally, but also raising her up 21 metres above sea level through 11 locks. That's the entry sea lock, then 2 further locks before we have to get past 2 swing bridges, and then the 8 locks in a row which make up Neptune's staircase, the longest staircase lock in Britain. Just Neptune's staircase on its own takes an hour and a half to transit through.
So just to give a bit of scale, Florence's mast is about 15 metres. So yeah, we've got quite a distance to travel up, not very far along today. So we've got all of our fenders on the side ready and 2 very long lines, which are the things that you're supposed to need to be prepared for the locks. But everything else was pretty straightforward. You book it all online, so there was no admin to do this morning.
Just radio to say they're flooding the chamber and they'll be opening the gates soon, and then we can get started right at 9 o'clock as soon as they open.
Because you can only go through at certain states of the tide, if we don't make this 9 o'clock opening, then we have to wait until 1:30. Keen beans this morning.
Yeah, keen beans to beat the tide. Once we're in there, we're out of the tide. We don't have to worry about tide for the next week.
Yeah, we're here, we're ready. Looks like we're potentially the only boat here. We're still very early in the season, so I think the canal might be quite quiet. They're opening the first lock gate, and so we're off. So the lock keepers actually passed us one of their lines for the very first lock, which was very helpful. And we're going up.
Because of the steep angle of the mooring lines in the lock, we've tied a safety rope over our fairlead to make sure the mooring line can't slip out and damage our pulpit. A precaution we first tested in the Panama Canal many years ago.
The level of the lock that we're in is now level with the water in the lock ahead of us. So they're about to open the gates, and then we can make our way forwards to the next one. So that's us through the sea locks, and we've got about a mile now to go up this section of canal, and then we have to stop before the swing bridges because there is a train that's about to cross the bridge. So they've opened the swing bridge to allow us into the start of Neptune's staircase, but this is the swing bridge for a main road, so we are holding up traffic. Lock so that they can open the gates, the sluices even further and let more water in so we get through quicker.
On my own.
The locks used to be hand-powered with winches and capstans, but they've all now been converted to hydraulic or electric control, so the lock keepers can open and close the gates at the push of a button.
All of the locks and swing bridges are manned by staff from Scottish canals, and they're very relaxed and friendly, helping with lines and pulling boats from lock to lock, which makes transiting double or even single-handed perfectly possible.
The size of the locks dwarf our 37-foot Florence. They're 180 foot long and 40 feet wide, designed to accommodate a 32-gun naval sailing frigate and the ships which traded with the Baltic in the 1800s.
It's actually been really easy to manage between the two of us because the lock keepers do help you through the lock. So we've had one of the lock keepers on a stern line, me on the bow, and then Matt on board, just steering because we've got no engine on as we're going through. Yeah, I think the hardest part is I'm feeling thirsty. I've just spent the entire time chatting to people here from Australia, America, all over the world to see the Caledonian Canal. This is the final lock of the day. As soon as we're up to the same level as what's the other side of this gate, we'll open that up and that'll be us for the day. I think we're up. Time for me to get back on board. I'll pass you this. And now we're into the canal system. We can stop off at most of the pontoons that we see on the way, so we're definitely not going far today. I can see one just ahead that looks really nice, so I'm going to take that one for the night.
You can transit the canal in anything from a paddleboard or canoe to a ship, but a ship can be a bit of an obstacle for the other canal users.
So the Lord of the Glens, the big boat that they wanted us out of the lochs ready for, is just coming up, and you had to be really careful about where we were when this was passing because it takes up most of the width of the canal. So they are 45 metres long and 10 metres wide, so that's pretty much the length of Florence wide.
And that is the maximum size that the canal locks can take, meaning a tricky job to get into the chamber. And this is on a good day with no crosswind.
Our berth for the night on the canal gave enticing views over the Nevis range, and we couldn't resist the urge to step ashore for a closer look.
There are many walks in the hills the full length of the canal, not least the Great Glen Way, which runs along the route of the canal itself. But when you are moored next to the tallest mountain in Britain, there's only one real choice.
It's too cloudy today to make the summit of Ben Nevis worthwhile, so instead we've walked up to the north face of Ben Nevis and these really impressive cliff formations. It's supposed to be some of the most dramatic cliffs in the United Kingdom, and they're really famous for climbing and also mountaineering. But it's quite chilly up here, and we're already at cloud level and it's starting to rain, so I think it's time to head back to the boat, put the kettle on, and maybe even the heating.
Part of the trouble with living on the boat and not having a car is actually getting to the start of these walks can be quite time consuming. It's actually an hour and a half's walk to the base of this walk, and if we wanted to do the summit walk, even to get round to the regular tourist trail, the easier trail up to the summit, was 2 or 2.5 hours walk, and the bus that would normally be running is not running because we're this early in the season. So it's great. This was just the best, the easiest place we could get access onto the mountain from Florence on the canal.
Despite having to walk along the road for a fair way, it's always nice to get off the boat and just explore that little bit further than what we can see directly from the boat, and really nice to see Ben Nevis up a bit closer. Today we are into our first loch and we've been able to set the sails, which is really nice. It's a very easy name to remember, the name of this loch. It's called Loch Lochy.
They really weren't being very imaginative when they came up with that name, were they? What do we think? What are we going to call this loch? It looks a bit like a loch. Let's call it Loch Lochy. Done.
It's a beautiful day today despite the misty rain, but it is a shame that we can't see the surrounding hills, because from this loch you are still supposed to be able to see views of Ben Nevis. That's obviously not happening today.
Oh, even so, despite the weather, I'm really enjoying the Caledonian Canal so far. It's nice and calm when you're moored up. It's easy, just move on to the next section. It's a short distance. You don't have to worry about tides. You don't have to worry too much about the weather, other than whether you need to put your jacket on or not. And the scenery, even in this misty conditions, is beautiful. Yeah, really enjoying this.
So now Florence is at the highest point in the canal. We've gone through all of the up lochs and she's at 32 metres above sea level. So today we've taken advantage of that fact by using that height to help us up the nearest hill. So we're at Ben T, which is 904 metres above sea level. And from here we've got 360-degree views. So we can't quite see Florence, she's hidden behind the hill that we've walked up, but we can see further along the canal. So behind me you can see Loch Oich, which is where we're heading next, and then behind and beyond that is Loch Ness, which is the final loch in the canal.
Looking the other way, you can see the Nevis Range and Ben Nevis, the north face of Ben Nevis that we hiked up to the other day. And a lot of the ridges around here still have little patches of snow on. So it's pretty cold when you get up into the breezy exposed bits on the top of the hills.
When approaching the locks and swing bridges, we just have to call on the VHF radio and the canal staff open them for us, stopping the road traffic if necessary. But they only operate during the daytime and not at peak rush hours.
That's better. Turn our engine off and all you can hear is the sound of the main road, but it's still nice to have the engine off. You're not allowed to sail in the canals, but as soon as you come onto the loch you can sail again. And since we've got 9 knots of wind from behind, why not?
We're really getting into the swing of this canal boat life now, and today we have slowed down even further. Lovely day for a gentle potter in the dinghy. And just upwind of where we're moored, I've spotted some very Scottish looking cows on the banks of the canal. I was just trying to see how close I could get, because I don't know how shallow it is in here, and I just heard a crashing in the bushes, and one's coming down to the water to either have a drink or have a close look at me. Oh, I love them. Who doesn't love a hairy Highland cow? Not just the Highland cows, but also Highland calves. Absolutely gorgeous. What better way to spend the day than messing about in boats?
Lovely day for sailing around on the loch. There's perfect little breeze for the dinghy, nice flat water. There's even a little boat out with some red sails from the cruise ship barge that's just next to us. So you've got someone to sail with and play with. What a beautiful place.
There is plenty of history on display along the canal. Invergarry Castle was owned by a branch of the powerful Clan MacDonald. It was sacked and partially destroyed by British troops as part of the systematic suppression of the Highlands after the 1745 Jacobite uprising.
So we're now on our way down from the heady heights of 32 metres above sea level on Loch Oich. We've already come through 2 individual lochs today, and now we're at Fort Augustus, where there's a run of 5 lochs together, and then the road swing bridge to get out into the famous Loch Ness. So we're just waiting for a few boats to come up, and once they're up and through, then the chamber will be clear for us to head down. Going down the lochs should be a lot easier than going up, because as we come in, we're at the height where the walls are, so it's easier to step off and stop Florence by tying a rope off on a bollard. Whereas on the way up, we've got to throw the lines up to somebody up on the top to hopefully stop us. But to make it a little bit more tricky, we have got quite a strong wind. It's sort of gusting 20-25 knots today, blowing us into the loch and slightly across it as well. So easier on one hand, slightly more tricky on the other, but I think it'll be all right.
Great, thank you.
Transiting the lochs can be a social affair. We spent most of the time whilst waiting for the lochs to fill or empty by chatting with the loch keepers, many of whom have chosen to take on the seasonal job after retiring from their main career.
Okay, ready for space out?
Yeah, ready. So we're into Loch Ness and home of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. With a name like Nessie, I'm not sure if she's supposed to be a cuddly monster or if it's the sort of nickname that the Australians give their most deadly creatures, like the saltwater crocodiles are the salties and the box jellyfish are the stingers. Yeah, I think it might be that one. But she must be deep today. There's no sightings of her yet. We're currently in over 180 meters of water.
And this loch is very, not only deep, but long and straight. So there isn't much protection on the shore, even if it was shallower enough for us to anchor. So we're heading a bit further down, about halfway down the loch, where there is a small bay, an anchorage, and also a dock next to the castle. So yeah, should be a nice place to stop for the night.
As we said before, the wind seems to either blow up or down these lochs, very rarely across. And you can't predict what the wind's going to do, but the prevailing direction of the breeze is from the southwest. So if you're going to go through the Caledonian Canal, you're more likely to have wind with you if you go the direction we're going, if you go north. And this is beautiful. We've been able to sail down all of the lochs so far. Unfortunately, tomorrow the wind is going to switch round, and I think we're either going to have to be doing some beating, or if it's not enough wind, some motoring. But we'll be almost all the way to the end of the canal by then. And it's been fantastic to be able to sail down all the lochs instead of having to motor the 60 miles it is through the whole of the canal. Slight pause in proceedings in the beautiful scenic sail down Loch Ness. We were running the engine when we left the lochs at the top, and I noticed that we didn't have an RPM reading on the engine instrument panel, and therefore we also were not generating any power from the alternator. The alternator wasn't running even though the engine was running fine. So that's a problem because it's not then charging the engine battery, although we can do that through the rest of our power system back from the lithium batteries, but we needed to fix it. So whilst we've stopped here, I've emptied all of this stuff out of the cockpit locker to climb in round behind and get to the back of the engine instrument panel, which is where I suspect the problem is, because the signal that gets sent to excite the alternator and start it spinning, start it generating power, actually goes through a bulb on the back of the engine instrument panel, one of the indicator bulbs. And if the bulb is blown or the pins on it are corroded, then it doesn't get enough of a signal through to start the alternator generating power. And I suspect that's what the problem is, but I don't have a spare bulb, unfortunately. So what I have found in the bottom of my toolbox is a whole bunch of 120 ohm resistors. I have no idea why they're there. I haven't used those for many, many years, but a resistor of that value is exactly right to mimic the wattage of the bulb that was in there. So I've just made up a resistor with a couple of spade terminals either side that I can shove in its place. I'm going to do that, and then we'll see if that gets the alternator spinning and generating power again. Right, so once I start this, it should start, and then when I give it a few revs, this should actually start reading to tell us it's working. Okay, so it's on, give it a few revs, there you go, and now that's the alternator working. So it works. Back in action.
We're currently sat in the second to last loch of the canal. I think this trip has ended much sooner than either of us would like. We were both like if the canal continued on a little bit further, because we've both really enjoyed it. It's been a great trip and a real break from the usual open sea sailing that we do. salt water and open sea.
The fee for our 37-foot Florence to pass through the canal with a 7-day ticket was £302, which we think is a very fair price given that there are lock keepers on hand to take your lines on all of the 29 locks, and that stopping at canal docks along the way with their showers and toilets is included in the fee.
So here we are in Inverness Marina, just a couple of miles motor round from the exit of the canal, and this is where we're going to prepare Florence to sail on the next leg of our journey up to Norway. But it was definitely the scenic route coming up the west coast of the UK, up through the Irish Sea and through the Caledonian Canal, and I absolutely love the Caledonian Canal. It's something I'd always wanted to do at some point in life. And although it's not the shortest and quickest way to get up to Norway from where we were on the south coast, it was definitely worth doing. So much so that Amy's having to persuade me not to trade Florence in for a barge and get a lockkeeper job on the canal. It was very relaxed, no need to worry about tides or weather, and just beautiful scenery. I think it helped that we had really good weather as well. But yeah, definitely a trip that I would recommend to anyone. It really was a holiday.
Don't worry, we are not selling Florence anytime soon, but I also really enjoyed the canal. It was a really good opportunity to slow down and kind of had the benefits of marina life in that you're more attached to land and the boat is safe and secure and you can leave it in places, but that you're still moving and travelling. So yeah, really nice experience, but I'm feeling ready to head out to sea and to life at anchor again.
And next time we are going to do exactly that. Join us as we set sail across the sea to Norway and on towards the Arctic Circle.
Of course, don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you don't miss the next episode here on YouTube.
Continuing our voyage on Florence would not be possible without the support of our patrons. Thank you to all of you, and especially to our star patrons.
Norway! It's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's been light for about an hour, and you can really see the mountainous coast of Norway ahead of us. It's exciting, never been to Norway before.